What's going on, regulars? Welcome back on another Thursday. How are we doing, Bobby?
It's your boy Bobby. What's going on, Caitlin?
I'm good. We're recording today in a beautiful, beautiful place, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's sunny. It's nice out. I'm feeling good. How about you?
I know this place is pretty immaculate. It's I feel out of place, but I feel in place at the same time. It's really weird. But no, this week's been good.
How's your first week as a 30-year-old man?
Painful. It hurts. I wake up. I have
Physically?
like physically, like I woke up. I have like a pulled muscle in my back. I'm like, oh god damn, this hurts. But no, like one thing that like we were talking about on our way down here, to where we're recording today was like a big self realization that I'm having about like my circle of people and how much smaller it's getting, but in like the best possible way. Like I feel back in the day, I had like this giant group of people that I always hung out with. I always had something to do on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday or whatever. And like now I'm like struggling to find something to do. But then like when I do find something to do, it's way more fun than just going to a bar and
Well, and it's more impactful, right?
yeah, it's got more value to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that that's really interesting. Something, that I'm learning to navigate, my life through because I'm used to having all these people. I'm used to just, having plans that for that night already made a week before. And like now I'm like I finished work yesterday and I was like, shit, like I don't have anything to do. And then it was like, oh, well then, and then I wound up meeting up with a friend and we wound up going out and having a blast and it was a great time. And it's like, and we actually got into like a real nice conversation just about like life and stuff like that at the bar and it was cool. But like
Can I
it's
ask, so you're back in the drinking wagon? No.
yeah, I had a few beers. Yeah, I had a few.
Good. Love that.
I showed up with some claws actually. We went to a
Oh,
pregame, showed up with some
I'm so
claws.
proud. It's
Oh
so bad. Like, I'm a friend that's like, Bobby's drinking again. Let's give him a round of applause.
yes, love it, love it. But yeah, no, I had a couple beers, but I'm not really, I don't know, into the drinking thing anymore. Like I'll do it, but every now and then. How are you?
I didn't drink. Oh, I had 2 White Claws last night. Doesn't really count though.
That doesn't count.
No.
No.
So, I'm good. I feel like this week has been busy. All of them have. But I think we've done some really awesome episodes this past month, which I kind of want to just get into quickly. The guests that we've had on, like, wow.
Yeah, May has been a killer month.
Yeah, I think, and it all kind of, I don't want to say fell into our lap because I will give you a shout out. You worked hard to get those things in motion, but it's kind of like one thing happens and then it leads to another thing and then so on and so forth. So first of all, thank you so much to our guests. They've been awesome. Thank you also to the people that have reached out. May being Mental Health Awareness Month, we've gotten into some pretty deep stuff personally with ourselves and also just with the people that we've been speaking with. So the feedback that we've gotten, people opening up about things, has been incredible, I think.
Yeah, every single week that we've released something, I've had multiple people hit me up and they're like, wow, that person's story is interesting. Or I never, when they said this, like that resonated with me. Like value is being taken from every episode, which is what we say is that's our goal. One person we impact, that's it.
Absolutely.
That's how it's done.
Yeah. So I want to give a shout out to my 2 best friends quickly, Liv and Zoe. This is kind of similar to what you were saying. As you get older, you realize the people that are important and have an impact on you. And I spent the weekend with them a couple weeks ago. And they're the 2 friends that I have that always check in with me in a very honest way. If you guys remember Liv from episode, what was it?
19.
19, Liv was on. Very self-aware, very real, but also the friends that will kind of give you shit if you're not doing the right things for you to be good for you moving forward. So they kind of just checked in with me a couple weeks ago and, gave me some hard advice that I think sucked to hear in the moment, but was good long term, just in terms of like my career and like what I'm doing moving forward and just the people that I'm choosing to spend my time with and that kind of stuff. So just kind of like a shout out to real friends. I feel like what you were saying.
It's kind of like what I was saying. Like my circle, it's getting smaller, but like it's getting realer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm so appreciative to have friends that can, at risk of like, it was uncomfortable for sure. I cried and I got a little bit pissed and defensive at first, but they know me so well. They know what I want, and they don't do it to be like rude or to attack me. They're just saying like, hey, checking in. Like, I know who you are and what you want and what you're doing right now does not mirror that at all. So
Yeah. No, that's good. You got to have that in your life. I've
absolutely.
been, like I said, I've been trying to find that more in people now and kind of hate to say it, but trimming the fat of the people that aren't providing that for
Right.
me. I'm old now, so I got to do that, right?
I'll be 30 in like 6 months, so don't say that. But
Well, then that means you'll be old in 6 months.
okay, older and wiser, right? Okay, so to round out Mental Health Awareness Month, we have a guest on today that I personally am very excited about.
I'm pumped.
We actually went to high school with this person, which is interesting. Bobby does not know her until right now. but
Yes, I
she
met
happens to
her
be
1 hour ago.
Yeah, we've been shooting the shit for a while. So I would like to welcome singer, songwriter, and multi-platinum selling artist, as well as my personal friend from high school, theater nerd. You all know her as Roses. I know her as Liz. Welcome, Liz.
Hi.
Welcome. Well, we can't say welcome. We're in her house.
Yeah.
So-
Welcome to my house.
There you go. We're recording from Philly, and ironically, Liz lives like a block and a half away from where I used to live about a year ago. So we were quarantined less than a half mile away and didn't even know it a year ago.
Wild. I don't know how I didn't see you.
I wish I had known that because, I mean, the listeners know that I quarantined with my ex, which was humbling to say the least. I would have much preferred getting quarantined with your ass.
Yeah, you definitely could have knocked on this door.
We're taking some breaks here, bless. But anyway, so Liz, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. I'm
Welcome.
excited.
It's been what? I think probably 6 years since we've seen each other. Probably more than that.
I literally don't. I was like trying to think about this morning. Like, when was the last time I saw you? And I feel like it was high school because I do not do anything like near the high school. Like,
Yeah.
I just try. I don't know.
Well, I have to point out, we did go to a gay club together. Remember in Philly, like after graduation. Were we in
was
college?
that after graduation?
Yeah.
Wait. Oh my gosh. Actually, that night, my ex-boyfriend called me.
Oh.
Don't want to mention any names, but that was oof.
That was a fun time. We were definitely underage. We were definitely drunk. We were definitely
Underage.
Yeah, and I think
And
it
you
was.
got
We
into the
stopped at
bar?
Checkers. That was the first time I had
Oh
Checkers.
my god, I was such a head
We
rat.
went
I love
to Woody.
Checkers.
Was it Woody?
I
No.
think it was something
Eye
like
Candy,
Woody.
Eye Candy.
Eye Candy. Yes, it was like underage night, and we went with a couple of high school friends. My sister drove us. We drank like probably like I don't know
Pinnacle.
in the car.
I literally, and then like after that, we went to Checkers and got milkshakes, and it tasted like the Pinnacle. So I've never had to have I couldn't have a vanilla milkshake since then.
You're welcome,
Ugh.
because those shits hurt your belly. So anyway, welcome, Liz.
Thank you.
So the public probably knows you as Roses. Can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from? Give us some background.
Okay, a little bit about myself. I guess like I'm from Lansdale, North Wales, and I don't know. I'm now a musician, like in the dance world, pop world. Yeah, I've just been doing a lot of like writing and releasing in the pop world and working with a lot of like DJs and things like that.
So the song that you're probably most popularly known for is Roses with the Chainsmokers.
Yeah,
And that was released.
6 years ago,
Was
like
it
next
really?
month. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, we
Wild.
are getting old.
Yeah, it was.
I
Well, it's
know.
funny because like you had sent it to me because as everyone knows, I don't listen to like the pop music and whatnot. But you were like, yeah, listen to this song. I was like, wait, I actually know this song. It doesn't have screaming in it. But I saw on Spotify. It said 2015. I'm like, wait, I have heard this song like a
Mhm.
billion times, like
Yeah.
for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. So how did you ultimately end up heading down this path? Like, did you know that this is what you wanted to do, or
Yeah, I mean, I went through a really bad breakup in high school, and I started doing like we have something called like the morning show, and like I was doing like my
At high
senior
school,
year,
yeah.
high school. I was doing like they had me on like singing songs, and it was like very clearly like about this breakup, which
Wait,
had
I don't
like
think
just
I knew that. Was
happened.
this after I graduated?
Yeah,
Oh my
it was like my
gosh.
senior year, and so I just kind of like started like writing music and just I always wanted to do that. Like that was just something that I always wanted to do. But I guess like then it came to college and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And like so I went to the community college, Montco, and then I went to Temple after that, and I was just like meandering through life, I think. And I was just like writing music and releasing it randomly on SoundCloud. And then like the Chainsmokers had found me. Like just the way that it happened was just like so random, and like how like it was like winning the lottery, to be honest. Like
Mhm.
it was just like this is happening for you. So they like hit me up on Twitter. Like I thought they were hitting on me, and I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm gonna go hang out with this dude. And, but no, like I ended up like skipping class and like writing with them, like hanging out with them, and then.
Could you imagine your teacher being like, "You weren't in class"? You're like, I was doing way bigger things.
Platinum hit, thank you though.
I remember like at Temple though, like at like I forget what it was, but they were like, yeah, sometimes an opportunity will approach you before you graduate, and like you have to take those things. And I was like, I'm gonna take it.
You're like,
yeah,
rightfully so. You should have.
Yeah,
you did.
So that opened up a bunch of doors for you. What kind of stuff? Just I know the answer to this, but just tell our listeners, like, what did you through that get to experience?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. It's been kind of weird because it's like you never really get to like sit back and notice what you've done or accomplished or like the things that you've been through. Like I was doing like right after that we were doing like Coachella and I had met like Usher and like Third Eye Blind. Like it was just like all these things all at once and I was just like I don't know how to function. Like I don't know how to catch up and I think even now I'm just learning how to understand like that was a part of my life and like
how old were you again?
God, I don't know, like 22.
Wow.
I couldn't handle that at 22. I couldn't handle that now. I'm 30.
No, like I don't know how I like it was my life was like revolved around like you have to be at this place, talk about these things and like then I was meeting like people who I had idolized for like years, like ended up like writing with like Alicia Keys and like things that just like I never thought would happen and just all happened by chance because like the Chainsmokers had like messaged me on Twitter and not to owe my career to them, but like I think that just it opened a lot of doors.
So what did your parents I have to think what was your parents going through?
You know, it was tough because my brothers were in a band and they were like on a major record label and everything. So for me it was kind of like not that big of a deal that I was going to do music. And I remember when I decided I was gonna not go back to school. It was like one summer and I had told my mom, like we were on like family vacation. I was like, this is the perfect time to break the news.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I'm not going back to school in the fall. And my mom was like, knew this was gonna happen. My dad was like, what are you gonna do? And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm on the radio, so I feel like I'm probably gonna do that. I don't know.
Going out on a limb.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I'm going that
Feel
way.
good about this, yeah.
But they've always been super supportive. So like for me, I was extremely lucky to be honest. And yeah, I don't know. I think like having my brothers kind of pave that path was very helpful.
What kind of music did they play?
They do rock music.
Like
Alternative rock, like Kings of Leon type stuff.
Oh, cool. All right. Probably something I would listen to then.
Absolutely.
For sure, yeah. It's like it's very like Nirvana inspired with like dark guitars and things like that.
I love Nirvana. Okay, I'm gonna have to catch up
Put
on
a pin in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you ultimately decided to drop out of college.
So I ultimately decided to drop out of college. So I have two older brothers. My oldest brother started managing me and he's like still my manager to this day, with somebody else now. And then my middle brother, who's like older than me, middle child, he like produces all my music and you know, we kind of just forged it together and now we all have like our separate careers. Like my oldest brother's like managing other people and like my middle brother he's like producing other records and things like that, so it's just it just happened. I don't know,
That's
like I wish I could like say like this is what did it, but like I
think music's run thick in your blood for a while. And I it's interesting, Bobby and I were discussing this before we got here. You kind of flew under the radar in high school. I feel like he's like, this girl's famous now, like how did I not know her in high school? I'm like, she really, I think your voice and your style was very unique back then, and I don't think that 17-year-olds were ready for it and they were ready to like digest like what you had to bring to the table. So I'm so thrilled that it's all come to fruition for you, and I think you really, really deserve it. It's been awesome. So talking about high school a little bit, do you want to get into what kind of started inspiring? I know you talked about your breakup a little bit, but how did that and other things kind of bring you where you are now, I guess?
I think it's like I was super inspired by like the Adeles of the world, like at the time like Taylor Swift, people who were talking about things that were real, things that like I felt like I was going through. And so in high school, you know, like I had gone through like bullying and things like that throughout like just all my schooling, and then like going through like my biggest heartbreak, like that was really hard. So I was like, you know, I want to write something. Like I don't know really what was like the turning point where I was like, I'm gonna sit down at the piano and write something about this. I think it was like I was just ready to talk about it and I didn't know how. And so I knew that the only way I could communicate was through music and that people would listen that way. So it just became this thing where I felt so alone that I started doing that with my music, and then realizing that people like felt the same way. And so it like snowballed into this thing where I was like, okay, wait, I'm actually like kind of becoming a voice for these people. And it just, I don't know, collectively like happened.
I wish I had like an impact on some, you know what I mean? Like,
You have an
Look
impact.
at this.
But,
This is
like-
an
New
impact.
podcast.
Yeah.
Come on.
but I mean, like, I guess I mean it in like a way, like from like an artistical standpoint, you know what I mean? Because I do not do any of the things of art at all.
This is
Like,
art,
This is
though.
art.
eh,
I see what you're saying, but this
Yeah,
does
like,
count.
I guess I just like I can't draw, can't sing, can't dance, I can't do.
You could write a country song.
I could
as
write a
you
country
said
song. We
earlier.
did
Ooh,
talk about
burn.
that. Yeah, we all know my feelings towards country, but
Uh,
I don't, you know what I mean? Can't play an instrument, can't do any of that stuff. So like that's why like
not that you can't, you just haven't tried. You don't know.
There you go.
You don't know.
It would turn out garbage.
Like you never did like the teenage like I'm gonna play guitar phase.
No,
I'm
it was just
surprised
really
at that by you because you're such like a
a metalhead.
You had an emo phase. Everybody did, right? I feel like.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah, I'm
Of
surprised you
course.
didn't like
emo
try.
emo is not dead.
Never.
Never dead.
No.
Never dead. Yeah. But yeah, no, I never tried picking up a guitar. Never, because I picked up a guitar. I looked at it. I'm like, I have no
I
clue
think
what I'm.
Was it like a
freaking
confidence thing or just like a lack of interest?
I don't know.
Oh, this is what always happens. Turns into therapy. At
Sorry,
some
like
point.
let me interview you. This
That's
is
I
something
love
that.
happens in all of my interviews. I'm
I
like, so
love
how's
it.
your life?
I
love that.
It was it a confidence? It may have been. It's really weird because I'm like really good at Guitar Hero, like amazing,
Oh, okay, all right.
amazing at Guitar Hero. Like, but I couldn't like when I pick up, I just don't. I think really what it is, I don't understand how a fucking guitar works. Like it
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense to me. Like I'm into cars and stuff like that. I
makes
understand
sense,
how
yeah.
a car works.
like mathematics.
So then when I was selling car parts and stuff like that, like, okay, this does this because of this. I look at a guitar, I'm like, so you hit this chord and all of a sudden it sounds awesome. I
Yeah.
don't get it. I just
Wild.
don't get it.
Yeah,
So
guitar didn't really compete for me. I tried for like a month, and I was like,
I
this
feel like
is-
you're so musical though.
I kind of agree with you, and it just didn't compute for me. It was just too much. My little brother plays guitar
Yeah.
excellently, and he tried to teach me once too. And I think I'm like a very
It's a lot
much,
of focus and like coordination, I feel like.
and I'm a very much instant gratification person.
Yeah.
And I usually, if I'm good at something, the first time I try it, you can at least tell that I'll be good at it. Guitar. I was
I
not.
gotcha,
right?
I was
yeah.
like, this is hard, and I hate it.
That makes sense. I feel like it's taken me a very long time to be like a mediocre guitar player because like I'm also the same way. And so like I remember I started playing in like maybe like 7th grade. I was like playing like KT Tunstall, if you remember her. Like
Mhm.
and so like that's the stuff that I started like learning. And then like, I would take breaks and I'd be like, oh, this sucks. Like I'm not getting any better. And so like just over time I would like pick it up, put it down, pick it. Like I go through phases. Like I'm mostly a piano player, but
I didn't know that.
yeah, I would go through phases of like, oh, I'm gonna pick up a guitar today.
Well, I think you're great at guitar. I don't think you're mediocre.
Thank
so.
you.
So, songwriter.
Mhm.
I find that to be really interesting because the way I connect a lot to my style of music actually is because, and most people don't know this too, is that metalcore genre is actually some of the most poetic music that you can actually listen to and see, but most people are just kind of afraid of it, which is fine. But when you get down to like the nitty gritty of it, you're like, oh my God, like these guys are poetic. Where you found your initial inspiration and some of your struggles through high school and stuff like that, how do you continue to find inspiration? Because I know it's hard for us, and we were talking about on the way down here. People are like, is it hard to like make content? Yes,
Yeah.
it is fucking way
Wow.
harder than you can think. So
Yeah.
like, you got that jump there. What is the driving force that keeps you going to continue? I mean, you had your big hit in 15. It's 6 years later. 6 years in the entertainment industry is like,
Yeah.
oh,
Lifetime.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
what's that look like?
Self-sabotage.
We love that here.
Yes.
We're very good at that here.
Honestly though, like I feel like a lot of times I'm opening old wounds. I'm trying to relate to something that people I love are going through by digging deep into things that I've gone through. Like I'll dig into like my first heartbreak very often because like that to me was the most raw thing that I had been through. So like if I'm like, just talking earlier when we were just talking about relationships and things like that, and I'm like, okay, I can draw from this. I can draw from this experience. Where do I relate? And so then I will put myself in your shoes through the things that I've been through. And that's really kind of what I do. And then I'm also like taking notes constantly. Like if I'm at a restaurant or if I'm, you know, just reading books or watching movies or talking to my boyfriend, things that he's going through. Like for me, even if it's like he's struggling with whatever, I can relate to a relationship, something that other people can relate it to. For me, it's like I'm always building something in my head. And like throughout the day, every day, I'm like a concept. I go by concept. So if like something pops in my head and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I want this to unhappen to me. Like I'll put that in my phone and things like that. Like things that like I can make a whole song out of. I just like collect concepts all the time.
So the gears are always turning.
Always, yeah. It's like it never turns off. Like in the middle of the night, I'll wake up and I'm like, I gotta write this down because if I don't, I'll forget it and then I'll be mad at myself. So it's
you know who that sounds like is Elon Musk.
Oh God.
No, seriously, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Joe Rogan asked him, he goes, "What's it like to be you?" And he goes, "You don't want to be me."
Yeah, it's tough.
And he was like, "What do you mean by that?" And he's like, "I don't stop.
I'm sure.
Everything, it's just constantly going." And he's like, "You don't want to know what these thoughts are." And that kind of sounds like that, where you're just like one thing after another,
right.
Like I got to do this. That's going to help and whatnot. That's
and I imagine too for him, like, well, I mean, I don't know what it's like to be Elon Musk, but you know, for me, it's like I'm constantly moving the touchdown line. Like if I'm constantly competing with who I was, having like a number 6 song, like that's something to compete with. And like the fact that you have to compete with yourself, like I don't want to be one hit wonder. I don't want, you know, like that's a lot to deal with. But then I have to think of the fact that like that was the Chainsmokers song, not mine. I was on the song, but it's not, you know what I mean? So it's like I'm still building from there, but I still saw the success from that song. I still saw what it was like to reach that fame. So it's like I'm constantly living between 2 worlds. So for me, it's like, how do I keep this momentum going with people realizing I'm still that person, but also like I'm still building? It's like a whole thing.
I commend you.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do that.
I'm exhausted listening to it. I'm not gonna lie, it sounds tough. I've wondered that often because I feel like you've always had impact, and your writing's been very intentional. I think from someone who listens to it, and you, like you said, kind of blew up like after you and I had spent time together. So I knew a little bit of maybe what you're going through at that time, but I knew mostly high school stuff was when you and I were friends. So I was always often wondering like what, you know, this newfound fame versus like I know the stuff she's put out in the past, like how are those 2 worlds going to merge together? Like versus, and I feel like you kind of have come into your own a lot over the last couple of years, and I think a big focus of that has been impacting people with things that you do, because you're not, I mean, I don't see you as an artist who's just like, let's put out a pop song, let's just dance music. Everything you do is very intentional. So like, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think like definitely a lot of my career is like just trying to be the artist that I needed when I was younger. Like being like I used to just like lay on my floor, like listening to like Gwen Stefani, like singing stuff. Like to me, like I want to be that artist to somebody who like comes home from school and they like had been through something and they're just like, I need to put this song on. You know what I mean? Like for me, I've just always wanted to be that person to give a voice to people who are afraid to use theirs. And so I think like throughout, like since high school, I had always promised myself I'd be vulnerable and I would be willing to, you know, put myself out there so that people could see like the rawest parts of me, because I know that like that's what we need to see sometimes, to see the human people. And I think also being in the industry is like things are so polished. Like if you're just like just anybody releasing music right now, or just in general pop music, I feel like it's so polished. Like when you look at like the pop girls in the industry right now, everyone's so fit and they're like perfect prime and like, you know what I mean, everything's perfect and like their music is perfect, and I don't want to represent something that like I'm not. And not to say that they are, but I want to represent something for people that feels real and attainable. And I want people to know like you don't have to be like this crazy like star popular person, you know what I mean, to be what I am. Like I just want people to know that you can be just like a normal girl. And so I think that's like the biggest thing I want to represent.
I think the big word there was vulnerable. You know, it's funny, our guest last week, Janelle, we talked about vulnerability on there a little bit, and she had just made a post and it was like, it's like, answer the question, I am, and there was a big blank. I don't know if you saw this, Caitlin, but I answered it and I wrote, I am vulnerable on it, and she was like, yeah, like let's go. You know what I mean? Because like that's one thing that I've been trying to work on I don't know, would you say like the last year or so of me like trying to tap in, because I'm Tommy Toughnut. Like I'm a
Mm.
stereotypical dude who doesn't have feelings,
Right,
right?
right. Suck
And
it
like
up.
now it's like slowly starting. I've gotten way more into listening to music
Mhm.
over the last couple years. I mean, I've always been into it, but like way more in depth. And tapping into that vulnerable side has been like a big accomplishment for me. So thank you, because although I don't listen to your music specifically, but in
We
it
did on
comes
the
full
way
circle.
here.
We did,
We did on
yeah.
the way here.
Awesome.
Yeah, we were jamming out. But no,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Songwriting, what does that look like, as far as like, I know we talked about kind of where you get your inspiration.
Right.
How do you, I mean, seriously, like, how do you write a song? Like, honest,
This is not where I thought we'd go, but I'm also so interested.
Yeah, I have to know. Well,
Do you start with the words? Do you start with the melody? Like, how does that look?
I think it's like both. Like, it depends on the day. If I'm like, I don't know, it depends. Like, I could sit at the piano and be like, okay, wow, I love these chords. I'm going to write around these chords. Or I could have a concept and I write the words or figure out the syllables, like, because I have to like count out syllables, make sure it fits with like whatever I'm playing, the time frame that I'm playing. So it's like, it really depends. Like, I could start with a guitar, or like if I'm writing with a DJ or a producer that typically likes to like make the production beforehand, then I'm writing beforehand. Like when I wrote with the Chainsmokers, they sent me a bunch of like songs without any melodies or words or anything, and so like that's where I drew like my inspiration for Roses, and I was like, hey, this is what I've got, let's build around this now. So it's hard to explain because it's basically different every time, but I would say mostly I go and I sit at the piano and I like plot out some chords, and I'm like, okay, cool, I have a concept that'll fit this vibe.
Do you have like a time frame that you have to like work within? Because me, if we're going to like loop this back into like mental health,
Mhm.
I haven't actually even told you this, but I started like journaling a little bit lately, and just like little,
I'm so proud of you.
but just like little things. So like I don't write out like a diary. Like
Right.
one thing I did was, I wrote like three things. Or sorry, I started on like one side of the page. It's like kind of abstract. Started on like one side of the page and wrote like up the page instead. And I just wrote what I felt when I woke up that morning, or if I couldn't get to it in the morning, I did it when I went to bed. Like, and I just picked one word,
I love
and I
that.
just write one word, and I just keep going down. But there have been times where like I go and I pick up my book, and I'm like, I don't have anything to say, but I feel bad about it though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like you're like as if somebody's gonna read it and they're gonna be disappointed.
That I didn't write something
Yeah.
down. Like I haven't written something down in a couple days, and I'm just like, but I haven't had a feeling in a couple days, I guess. So
Yeah.
like, do you have that same like? Do you
Like a
ever like
writer's
get to the
block?
piano and you're just like, fuck, today's gonna be a waste. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I do. Sometimes, like, not every song I write is like gonna be released. I mean, I have like hundreds of songs that like just probably are shit. You know, like just like looking back, I'm like, okay, no, it's not my best song. But luckily, like it's not really like a time frame thing. Like for me, I have like a bunch of songs lined up that are going to be released, so I know that I have time right now. If tomorrow in my session I don't write a song that's going to be released, then it's like, all right, it's fine. I still have like 10 more that are already set to go.
they're in the pipeline.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about just like timing like that. And even so, even if I didn't, it's like I just have to trust that something's gonna come of my creativity or of my non-creativity.
Mm-hmm. You live in a good area for creativity, I can tell you this.
Mhm.
Yeah,
This is the, I mean, very.
my
how do you-
screaming neighbors.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Love
we
that.
walked out. There's like 8 kids outside screaming around.
So, with you being our final guest for May, Mental Health Awareness Month, I feel like this all just kind of aligned perfectly because a lot of your messages and your social media outreach and just knowing you as a person, you do have quite a deep connection with mental health. Do you want to talk us through a little bit what kind of struggles and stuff you face as an artist, as a person, what that looks like for you?
Yeah, I think like my mental health, it's like such a deep part of my life. I feel like because like I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was in like 4th grade, so I had been seeing like a therapist since like then, and so I didn't really understand the depths of like anxiety, depression, things like the OCD, things like that, until like senior year into college. I was like realizing, okay, actually this is like depression, like this is like a thing, like, and actually the person who introduced me to it was like my sister-in-law. She's like, I think you should see like an actual therapist, like not somebody who's gonna like prescribe you your like ADHD medicine. So like this, it was like a thing that just like happened to me that I realized like that I had, because I was like I was like, why don't I ever want to do anything? Like, I just feel like I'm not going to accomplish anything. Like, it's just like a very like a down talk that I always had on myself. So I feel like mental health became this thing that I like started exploring and then realizing that like I wasn't alone in. And since then, it's kind of just been this long process of learning how to live with it instead of like not having it. Because I mean, you know, I'm you know, on medicines and things like that, but I think that the biggest part of mental health for me is learning how to do like build a partnership with it, because I think it's something that's gonna come and go in my life like over years to come. And so if I learn like coping mechanisms like music, healthy ones, then I know I can manage this for the rest of my life. And so that's where music comes in, and like I learned how to speak through it. And you know, a lot of my fans talk about how like, oh, I was going through this and like I was listening to your song and it sounds like you were like going through exactly the same thing. And it's like, yes, I was. And like, that's the point. That's why I wrote the song, you know? And so that's kind of just where it goes in my head, is just like, I try to be so vulnerable about it. But I think like the biggest thing about having a platform is that I want to be vulnerable about the fact that I get help for it, because there's a lot of artists right now that I work with that, you know, their whole platform is built on being depressed or being anxious, and a lot of people see that side of them when they listen to their music or they look on their social media. They see these dark like mental health clouds over their heads, but they don't see behind the scenes of actually this person's like bubbly and happy when I'm talking with them and we're talking about their anxiety and depression. And when we're writing these songs, yes, of course we're coming across like it's a very hard thing, because it is. But I think like the reality of mental health is that it's up and down and not always so terrible. And so I think like as an artist, I'm very adamant about showing the fact that it's a roller coaster and not like this constant down or this constant up, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. I think one thing that I thought of as you were speaking there was like, you have these artists that kind of build their foundation
Right.
around like being depressed and this, that, and the other thing, where they don't ever talk about the other side, that they actually, they use their music as an outlet. Okay, we get that. That's what really you're kind of supposed to do as an artist, right? But you don't think about that they also get help too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they don't ever really
Right.
talk about that. You know, they're actively doing things that are also helping them to, you know, get out of these dark places. So I commend you for at least wanting to shed light on that.
So just to list them, because we like to do this here. Number one, you are in therapy, I assume.
Yes.
Correct? We love therapy. We're both in therapy as well. Always
Amazing.
plug therapy. But just to, you know, give us your rundown. So you struggle, or I don't like to say struggle, you
live
with ADHD, depression, anxiety, and
OCD.
Okay, wow.
Yeah,
Okay. And
it's wild.
those were diagnosed later in your life?
So I've always had obviously ADD, as I talked about, but I think like anxiety and depression was a thing that came like after high school. I mean, I don't really know, because I didn't know what it was. Like when I was going through bullying, like obviously I was anxious. Like I didn't want to go to school and people just like pick on me. But I think, you know, now I have a grasp on it, and I was like officially diagnosed with it after like maybe my first year of college. And then OCD came after actually being like in the music industry, and it's kind of been like triggered through like how I cope with my anxiety and depression is kind of like I'll obsess over like numbers, like social media numbers, or you know, just like any like knobs, or you know, just like random things that just don't matter. Like I'll go around my house collecting pens, like just things that like don't matter, but like things that when I'm in therapy, she's like, okay, now like what were you avoiding in that time? So it's like my OCD is very much avoidance and coping with not feeling enough in one aspect of something.
That's so interesting. I never even knew, because I honestly, I don't know a ton about OCD. I know that we've talked about it in the last episode, that people will kind of say, oh, I'm having an OCD moment, which to me is like, I need my highlighters to be in rainbow order. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So that's interesting.
I was actually going to ask you, like, what are the things that, you know, as far as, because I don't think I know I mean, like you say, everyone has, like you say, their quote unquote OCD moments where I'm like, oh, no, it's got to be like that. You know what I mean?
Like the
Right.
But
volume
like,
on the
I don't
TV
think
and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever met someone who is like, no, 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 I have this and this is what happens. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, what are your tics? Like,
Okay, so I think it's like it's hard because I think like there's a lot of like very known OCDs, like germaphobes. I mean, for lack of better word, people who are like hypochondriacs, which I do have, but not in the sense that it's like debilitating. I can't go outside. And then there's also like the like which is germaphobes, washing hands, organization, of course. I mean, it all stems from somewhere, but like for me, mine is like I constantly think that I'm like gonna put my dog in the microwave, or I'm gonna like burn my house down when I leave. Like it's more like what I'm gonna do wrong to others, and so like if I'm leaving my house and my dogs are home, like I luckily have like a Ring doorbell, but it's also poisoned because I'm like checking it and I'm like, did I set my house on fire before I left? And like just decided to burn my house down without knowing it. So it's like things that like I can't trust myself. And I actually have a really good friend who's an OCD therapist who does like exposure therapy, and like she has podcasts as well, but she talks about exposure therapy and like how OCD is like a bullshitter and basically just lies to you, and it makes you not trust your intuition. Like, yeah, of course I locked the door. Of course I unplugged my curling iron. But for me, it's like, I probably didn't do that. I'm also like obsessed with jinxes. So like if I say, hey, this is supposed to happen, and I'm like talking about it too much, I'm like, it's not gonna happen because I'm talking about it, I jinx myself. But you know, it's like it's a lot of my OCD is like based on like something me doing it wrong.
it's funny. I had that literally as we walked in today. I was like, let me check my briefcase, make sure I have my laptop so we can record.
Right.
And then I like didn't feel it. I was like, and then I was like, of course I packed the damn laptop.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
It makes you not trust yourself. Just like anxiety or OCD, it has this way of convincing you that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
That's interesting.
I kn-
I'm thinking about this a little bit for you, Bobby. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, that's me. It's
Because you're the most thorough person I know. You always have your shit in order, and you never trust that you do.
yeah,
you
and it's
can't
funny.
trust yourself.
It's funny because even when I was like when I first started at my job, I remember like because at some point they like release you and they say, okay, you're still in training, but you're gonna be doing everything from start to finish now, and we'll just have someone kind of looking over your shoulder, you know, sitting at the chair behind you, make sure you're doing it right. And I would always be like, you know, to my trainer, I'd be like, hey man, like I'm doing this right, like this,
Yeah,
this,
like,
and
have to check.
then he would be like, you know the answer, and I'm like, yeah, but I want you to tell me it's right.
the
You know what I mean?
validation, yeah.
I need that reassurance that it's right.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we were literally just talking about that at work yesterday, and I'm like, damn, that's like really me. Another thing though is I never really thought that that's what OCD
Me
is.
either at all.
Yeah.
That's the
But
furthest thing from
it's
what
an
I thought.
iceberg. Like I said, like you just don't know, like just things that you do. Like for me, again, like I'm very superstitious, and that's part of my OCD. And so like if I leave my parents' house and I don't tell them I love you, I'm like, they're gonna die because I didn't say I love you, and now I'm convincing myself that they're gonna die. So it's like you like all of these things that like you don't realize. And I'm talking to my therapist, and she's like, yeah, that's an obsession, that's compulsive, like that's a lie that your OCD is telling yourself. And I'm like, okay.
And it's funny when you break it down to what it is:
Right.
obsessive compulsive
Disorder,
bleh.
yeah.
Bleh.
So what was that like for you, finding out that all of those things that you've lived with your whole life actually are a symptom of a disorder? Like how
I think
was
it
that?
like made sense for sure. And I was like, and then like I look back on things and I'm like, how do I unlearn this though? Because it's like if I'm gonna so like I'm human. So maybe sometimes I do forget to say goodbye to my mom when I'm like rushing out the door. Like she's not gonna die because I didn't do that. Like if she were to die, it wouldn't be because I didn't say goodbye. You know what I mean? So it's like I have to like rationalize all of these things in my head. And then another element to add to it is that like I'll obsess over being obsessed about it. So it's like my journal is me like obsessing about something, and I'm like obsessing that I'm obsessing about it. So I'm like, I need to stop obsessing about this. And then I'm like trying to figure out like the cure, and I'm like, okay, now I've just turned it to another obsession.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's, if I'm gonna walk away with one thing that I learned today is that OCD is definitely not what I thought it was.
No.
Right.
Because like you said, like my thing with OCD is the volume has to be divisible by 5. Okay, you know, like
Could
that's
be things like that.
yeah,
though.
yeah,
Could
which
be.
there are, yeah. But and then you're like, or
Like you
my
like
highlight,
even numbers.
yeah, like you
and-
said, my highlighter, yeah, my
Yeah.
highlighters have to be in order, or like I have to wash my hands 3 times instead of 5. And I know that those are things, but then you don't think
Right.
about all the other things that you just mentioned. You're like,
Right.
wow, wait, that's also because I do that. I tell my friends every time I hang up the phone, I tell them I love them.
Yeah.
I have to
Oh,
do it,
yeah.
and I make them say it back too. It's actually really funny.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love you. They're like, all right, man, I'll see you. I'm like, say it back.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay, yeah.
You're like, all right, dude. And then they're like, all right, I love you. And I'm like, yeah. Like, that's what I thought.
But it's true. It's like it's just things you don't think about.
And interesting too how it kind of wraps back into the anxiety piece of it too. Like you said, okay, what are you avoiding? That kind of stuff. I would have never connected those
You're
dots.
like, what is
either.
it that you're like filling up right now? Like for me, usually like social media is a huge trigger for me. And so like if I'm not, especially now with algorithms, you can't figure it out. It's like one day I'm having 1,000 likes, one day I have like 200. None of it makes sense. And so like I'm obsessing over how to fix the system and also how to make it so that when people look at my page, like they're not going to think, what the heck's happening to her? You know what I mean? So it's like I'm not only obsessing in my mindset, I'm obsessing over what people are thinking about this. And then when I'm thinking about it.
Oh my
You know what I
gosh.
mean? So
And
it's
just
like
spirals.
Yeah.
it spirals and it's just like it turns into anxiety and it's like it becomes debilitating. And then like especially if I'm like traveling for writing and I'm by myself, like I can't cope any other way than to be by myself, you know? So it's like that's, I mean, luckily I have music, but it's hard.
I have to ask, for someone who has a pretty decent, social media following, you know what I mean?
He means personally, our Instagram is not popping, but it should be. Guys, follow us on the gram anyway.
Yes, follow them.
But for your platform, like you obviously you do pretty well off of that. How do you manage that with mental health? Like, because I can tell you this, I have 1,500 followers on my personal, that maybe.
Which is
I
pretty
think
good for
That's
an
actually
average
great.
Joe, I think.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
great for an average Joe.
I
As she said.
maybe I guess I have no idea. I try not to care
Right.
enough. You know what I mean? But I have like 1,500. But there are times where I'm like, damn man, I've posted that and I only got 30 likes. None of these people
Oh,
like
yeah,
me.
too.
I couldn't imagine if I had. I think you have like 56,000 or
Something like
some
that.
or whatever. Like, I mean, you're obviously verified and all that, and it's like,
Right.
well, if I post something and you're like, oh man, like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I go through the same things that you guys go through. Like, if I post it, but then that's like another OCD trigger. It's like if I'm not getting so many likes per minute, then I'm like, okay, this post sucks, and I have to like delete it. Or like I'm like my therapist will be like, you have to keep that up for more than a day, just to like expose your therapy yourself. Like if I'm at like an hour and I don't have more than 200 likes, I'm like, fuck, I'm fucked. Am I allowed to curse? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And so yeah, so with
So you
social
talk about
media-
social media in therapy.
Oh yeah, I have to because that's like my biggest thing.
I think that's so important, and I
Yeah.
commend you for that. And I commend you for admitting that, because I think that a lot of people
Oh, yeah.
probably want to and don't. So
Yeah.
Do you admit that social media is toxic?
Oh, it's toxic.
All right,
Absolutely,
cool. All right,
it's
woo.
toxic.
All right. Just wanted to
I
make sure we're on
mean,
the
you
same.
have to think about like so many things. Like, so like if I didn't have to have social media, I wouldn't. I would be uncharted. But the fact that like I have to have social media, like the fact that like, okay, I'm between record labels right now, and I know that every A&R, person who could sign me to a label is looking at my numbers thinking, okay, what can she bring to the table? She's only getting 200 likes on this thing. She has this many followers, but she's only getting this many likes. And then also you have to add to the table the algorithms, whose posts are being promoted, who has social media managers. Like I don't have social media managers right now. Like I'm trying to do organic things. And so it's like everything you see that's like, oh my God, that person's like popping off. You're like, okay, well, do they have a social media manager? Are they paying for sponsored posts? Like it's just so many things that the average eye doesn't catch. And so for me, social media, I have to treat like a 9 to 5. Like if I wake up, I can be on it from like 9 to 5. And then I try to not be on my phone on social media at nighttime or on the weekends, because to me, it could become too much. But then that's like the thing that could ruin you, because you're supposed to have like 10 story posts a day, and then you're supposed to post like 3 times a week. And it's just, it ruins you.
I hate it. I'm the same way. If I didn't, and I don't need it. I know I'm not like you, where like I understand it's pretty fundamental for you to have it. I don't need it. The only reason why I'm really good at trying to like detach myself, essentially. Like if I post something, I get 30 likes on it. I don't care. I liked it, so I post it and I want to share
Right.
it. Like that's kind of like where I'm starting to get at. Like where I definitely remember when I first started Instagram, I'm like, man, really? I didn't, that didn't. Remember when like you got to your 11th like, it went to, you know what I mean? It didn't,
Yes.
and like so like you had to get that 11th like
Yes, I
as
forgot
fast as
about that.
possible, right?
Yes.
I remember thinking about that and being like, oh my gosh. And then now like I look back and I'm like, I don't care if I think something's funny, I'm throwing it up. You know what I mean?
That's great. I
Like,
mean, but that's also how to build a social media following is being authentic. So it's like there's the balance between trying too hard and being authentic. It's like dating, honestly.
Oh,
Like,
100%.
anything is like dating. Like social media, if you're trying too hard, people know.
Yeah.
You know?
I took a break from Instagram from, I would say, it doesn't matter when it was, but it was about 9 months. And
Wow.
it was because I was just super depressed. I just
It's
could
too
not, I
much.
couldn't look at, like, I remember looking at the girl who hosts Call Her Daddy, Alex Cooper, and I had opened my phone and I saw her in a bikini, and I'm like, I can't fucking do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because I don't look like that. That's for fucking sure. I feel like shit about me. I can't keep digesting this, and it's fucking my head. And I deleted it for 9 full months, and my life changed so much. It was like I would go out and I wouldn't think about like, gotta get the perfect picture for my story, like gotta get a perfect picture for Instagram. Like it actually made me worry less about even looking perfect
Being
when
who
I
you
was
are,
going
yeah.
out, because I'm like, well, I'm not gonna take a picture. So if I'd rather just feel good than like wear the good outfit
Yes.
for the picture. And then I came back when I was in a better place mentally, and I actually went back and looked at, I remember the post that triggered me so bad, and looking at it and being like, it's so cool that I can look at this now and not feel as shitty as I did then. But also like I missed, it was so funny. I remember coming back to social media and girls had babies that I didn't even see them get pregnant. So
Oh
I was
my
like,
God.
whose baby is that? I'm like, oh, it's hers. She had
Oh
a
my
whole
God.
a whole baby, and I missed the whole fucking thing.
Straight up 9 months.
Yeah, it was wild. But yeah, social media can be a fucking rabbit hole, and we're just
But it's
live
not
it-
real.
No,
That's
not
the
at
thing is
all.
that I try to be so real on my Instagram because like I know that I'm gonna have fans that come to my page and compare themselves, and I want them to know like this is me. I'm not photoshopping, that
you're a normal person.
Yeah, I just want to be, because I in the industry know how hard it is to be like, oh, I should be skinny, I should have abs. Like obviously I do not have those things. Like I'm a 5-foot person. Like I'm not gonna have the perfect build. Like so I just want people to know that like not everybody is what they say they are.
And I think that's really interesting because, like, when we interviewed Jake Lors from August Burns Red a couple weeks ago, if you guys didn't listen to that episode, you should. On that episode, I said the same thing. I was like, I commend that because when we came in, or when I went in for a personal training session with him, he was like a normal dude, And this is a guy that I've looked up to since 2000 when he joined the band in 2006. I'm like, oh my god, freaking Jake Lors, like that's insane. And he literally goes, I appreciate that, but I'm just a guy. And he's like, I'm literally just a guy.
Yeah.
And almost every person that I've met of any type of status is like, they're normal people. But they don't portray themselves that way, unfortunately. I mean, not saying you do,
Right,
you know what I
right,
mean?
right.
But like,
No, I get it.
a lot of them don't portray themselves that way
Right.
because they have to. Quotes.
You have to be like a rock star.
You have to be
Yeah.
this. And I'm like, wow, these people are just normal. You know what I mean? Like I met there's one Instagram kid. Do you guys know who Supreme Patty is?
no.
I don't think so.
He's this kid who's got famous for like squirting lemon juice in his eye, and like he just
Oh,
does like
okay, I think
degenerate
I saw
stuff
this.
like that. Dude, most normal person I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
He is so cool. Like, but then you hop on his Instagram, you're like, this guy's a freaking lunatic, and you're like, no, he's really normal,
Yeah.
like really down to earth. So like, I commend you for like your Instagram that it's normal. It's who you are. It's raw. It's authentic, and that's
I
important.
don't like the word normal. I like the word authentic. I think.
Yeah.
It's good. Normal can be like
You know,
slippery slope.
a slippery
Yeah.
slope. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to change my vocabulary then.
I'm just also really picky. So
I'm just
Yeah.
trying not to catfish. That's for sure. Like I want people to like know, like when they
yes.
see me on Instagram, like and then they meet me in person, like I just want it to be the same person.
it's such a rabbit hole though, because you're like, could I smooth out my skin and look a little bit more
Oh,
like
for
I
sure.
have like even skin, which like I'm not gonna lie, I
Nobody
do it
does.
sometimes. But
Yeah.
when I discovered Facetune 3 years ago, I remember downloading it and I was like, oh,
The
I
shit
can
you
look
can
like
do.
whatever I want on this app. And I remember the first time I edited a picture, I was like, look at me. And then I was like, this is not what I look like at all. And I had to like erase the whole thing. I'm like, people are going to see this picture of me. Like, she looks great, and seems like, oh, this bitch is a liar. Like, no.
It's funny to even talk about Joe Rogan again. He had a little segment about how his daughter, can put a filter on and look like this model. And he's like, this is tying into the mental health. He's like, this is so detrimental to little girls, mental health, that they think that this is what they need to look like or what they need to do, and obviously guys, there's the same platform for that, but like I think that's crazy. Like, we don't think about these things, you know what I mean? We think it's just a dumb little Snapchat filter or something like that, and then you're like, look, I've been using this analogy a lot lately. Instead of looking at it like up close, like right to your eyes, like look back at it and look at it as a whole, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so bad.
And we're fortunate too. We're in our late 20s. Some of us are in our 30s, not to mention names.
Yeah.
But
I don't know who that guy is.
We can look at it. We can have these honest conversations about it. Of course, it still impacts us, and of course, it's hard. But like, God bless the kids who are 12, 13.
That's what I always think. Like on TikTok, when I think about things that are.
Speaking of kids.
Yeah, speaking of kids.
If you guys can't hear, Liz has very active neighbors in the pool next door. So.
But it's true. Like, I look on TikTok and I'm like, and just like with the bullying I went through, like, I can't even imagine having these platforms of social. Like, we had MySpace and like Facebook.
And Instant Messenger too. That shit was rough.
Yeah, that was
Bitches
rough.
popped off on that.
They sure did. I'll tell you.
They were.
On the...
Did you get bullied?
Oh,
on
yeah.
Messenger? So did I. You'd print out the conversations and bring them to lunch. Like, look what Regina said about me.
Yeah, literally. Oh my god.
Yeah, could you imagine the stuff that like? Because I got bullied. I got bullied too. You know what I mean? And
If you didn't get bullied, you probably were the bully. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah, I mean,
true.
It was a trickle down effect. I mean, I feel like that's a real thing. Like, you don't know how to.
Rite of passage, I guess.
Yeah, like you don't know what to do. This is how you're getting treated by your superiors. Older kids, this, that, and the other thing. And you're like, well, what do I do? And that's all you know. So yeah, you probably pick on the next person. You know what I mean? Like, how do I? What's my outlet? Yours was music. Mine was like, I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? Now, see, mine was a lot more like physical. Like, I used to get my ass kicked all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like for guys it is usually physical, right?
It's not so much of that mental warfare that I would assume most women go through. You know what I mean? It's a little bit more emotional and mental and stuff like that. But imagine that. Imagine having a TikTok making fun of you that wound up getting 3 million views.
But that's the thing. That's
and you're
what
like,
TikTok is.
Oh my God.
Like, people love.
I call it Tic Tac because I'm old.
People love knocking down. I mean, even just like on there, like, typically my platform on TikTok is basically just calling out misogynists. So to me, it's hilarious. And so that. Like, but I'm always getting like trolled by these like little boys that are like, this is why women are behind on the totem pole. And I'm like, you're like 12.
You still think it's for peeing, bro. Good luck.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, social media is just wild these days. I actually, ironically, on the way here, was talking to Bobby about a post that you had put up a couple weeks ago about how when you started this whole journey with music, that you never expected that to be part of what you'd be doing. So do you want to talk to us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, when I was like idolizing people in the industry, I was like still going to Target and buying CDs, or like whatever we would go to buy CDs, like at the mall.
FYI.
FYE.
Is it E?
FYI is for your information.
Okay, so
FYE is
FYE.
for your entertainment.
Clearly
I
paid attention.
So we never went. But like, yeah, so basically, like, now when you're looking at like how to sell records or how to like do like Spotify numbers, you're like, you have to take so many things into account that I didn't want to be part of my career. Like, obviously when you start a music career or any creative career, you're doing it for the love of the art that you're creating. But for me now, it's more like, hey, you also have to create social media content. You also have to be on every single platform, and you also have to be very interesting and relevant and pretend that you're younger than you are and more single than you are. So it's like everything in the industry is like, you basically have to pretend that you are not who you are. And I was like, actually saying to my boyfriend the other day, I was like, you know what's kind of weird is like, I don't know anyone in the industry that goes into like in the music industry that pops off in their career with a solid relationship. Like, I don't think I've ever known anyone who became massively famous with a very solid relationship. Like, I can't think of anybody. And I'm like, that's scary, because my industry idolizes people that are available. And so for me, it's like, I not only have to be present on like social media and relevant and young, but I also have to pretend that I'm also available. So it's like all of these contribute to numbers. So it's like if people think that I'm available, like, oh, I'm going to listen to her music. Oh, I'm going to think that's about me. And, you know, so it's like so many things that I'm doing to make myself seem almost who I'm not, even as a person who is being authentic.
That is, I mean, we have like a little podcast, right? We're working hard, but I just kind of dropped 2 weeks ago officially that I have a boyfriend, and I wasn't sure I wanted to say it for a while for the exact same reason. I'm like, I don't know, like, I think everyone who knows me personally knows that, but do I want to close that door of listeners who slide in the DMs because they think that they could fuck me? Like, I don't know. Like, and then, but exactly, that's, and like I said, we're a 2-man shop.
Yeah.
You're a multi-platinum song artist, like and you're very happy in
on
your
every
relationship.
level. I think it's very hard to show yourself as like a complete person and still be relatable, because the media and like the industry for so long has promoted people that feel incomplete.
Ooh.
That's,
and you do, it's true, like when you're hurt, you can create some of the best art that you've ever made.
And that's where the
because
self-sabotage
you're so
comes in. Yeah.
raw and real. And like when you try and write a song about being happy, you're just like, I feel good.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I'm happy.
now, being the only guy in the room, I have to ask, your boyfriend, I mean, how does he handle this?
Yeah.
Does he think every song's about him? Like, what was that
No.
transition like?
He, you know, luckily, like, he's such a chill guy that, like, never once was he like, are you, like, okay? Like, he was never like, are you still in love with your ex-boyfriends? Like, he knew it, he knows it's all for the sake of art, which is great. And, like, I think that the funny thing, too, is, like, Roses, I wrote about him, like, at the months that I had met him, I read.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's, like, that was the start of us. And, like, I
just got goosebumps. Ooh, so cute.
And like I remember listening to that song in his car, just being like, it's not released yet, and like, you know, he's telling all his friends like the song coming out, and like,
do you know it was about him at the time?
He knew, yeah, like he knew it was about him. Like I'd sent it to him right away, and so it's like he knows that like the foundation of my career was built based on the goodness that we have. And so he also knows that like I am somebody who's emotional, I am self-sabotaging, and like I will dig deep into wounds that I have once felt, but not that I feel them now. And he is such a confident person that I don't think he would even care.
But what does he feel as far as like, because you talk about how like you have to portray yourself as
Right,
available.
yeah.
Like I would feel like,
I mean,
that
he
would
totally
be,
gets it. Because, like,
Yeah.
I talk about us, like, moving to LA, and I'm like, you know, it's great because I know the industry is rooted in how men can connect with you. And so I've been in situations, and basically every collaboration I've ever had is based on how men connect with men, how my manager connected with their manager. It's never like, because, like, in the industry, if I were to connect with a male as an identifying female, it's like either they can date me or that's it. And like if they're going to bring me on tour, it's usually because like there's some chemistry there or they see some sort of potential or something. And so like typically, at least in the dance world, you only see men touring with men because they just bro out all the time. No offense, but that's the way it is. And so like I'm always telling my boyfriend, I'm like, you know, it's great. Like when we move to LA, like you can bro out with these guys that I need to be in with because I can't really be available as I need to be, you know, like I know. And not to say like women need to be available to get ahead, but unfortunately in a misogynistic industry, it's how we have to portray ourselves. And he knows. And like I keep him pretty off my social media like post page because, you know, also I want to respect the fact that like he didn't choose this life for us. Like I don't want him to feel like he's on a platform if he doesn't want to be
obligated to do something.
You know what I mean?
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or to be someone
I
that
kind of
he's not.
I kind of keep my world different. Like Roses is who I am here, and then Liz is who I am there. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like two different people. I feel like.
What's that like for you?
It's weird. It's definitely weird because it's like even like when I'm like playing live shows, like even before I step on stage, I'm like I feel like Liz right now. It's like it's so weird because I don't know how else to describe it. It's really my alter ego. Like I am like when I'm Roses and I'm dressed up and I'm like doing interviews and stuff. Like I am this like I would say I'm badass and like confident, whereas like Liz is like anxious, like anxiety puking in the corner always.
I'm not gonna lie, knowing you, I remember seeing you kind of blow up, and I'm like, whoa, she's really like killing it. Like I've known you for
Right?
a while, and,
Yeah, so it's
and
like
I was
weird.
explaining on the way here, it's like, what's she like? I'm like, she's really just like sweet, a little goofy, like very like quirky, like really cool girl. Like, and then he's seeing your Instagram, he's like, really? Are you sure? I'm like, well, that's the Liz that I knew.
It's like two
I
different
don't.
people. It's weird.
And I was very interested to come here after having not seen you in so many
Oh
years,
my God.
and then having seen
Imagine
you
if I were
publicly.
like crazy different.
Well, I didn't know what to expect. I'm like, is she gonna be this like exactly what you said, polished? Like,
Yeah.
what I've seen on Jimmy Kimmel and all that stuff, and it's interesting that you're still you, but that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
You have to have two different personas.
Exactly. I have to be two different people. And like with like PR people, it's like they'll tell me things like if I'm in like a big interview, they'll say like these are things you can say, these things you shouldn't say, and you know, but I try to be just like me because like I said, I don't want to catfish anyone. I just want people to know like who exactly I am, and that's what you get.
But it's almost like you channel that like whoever your anxiety or your OCD kind of tells you that you aren't.
Right.
It's almost like once you get on stage, you can just be that person.
Exactly. Yeah, I live my best life on stage for sure.
I just think about that with like the mental health side. You know what I mean? Like having to flip flop. Like, God, sounds exhausting.
But I also think I would imagine it'd be difficult to be Rose's 24/7 because that's probably really draining.
Exactly. I would say the hardest part is the fact that people who are not part of my Rose's life, like my best friends, don't really understand. Not to like say that they don't understand things, but it's hard for me to explain the stuff that I go through day to day, and so it's so hard for me to even want to open up and be like, so I was talking to this label and about, you know what I mean, like because it's like it's such a weird world that I'm in, so it's kind of isolating in that way, where it's like I am two different people, but I feel like a lot of people don't get the Rose's side of me because it's so intricate and involves so many moving parts. And it's like me and my boyfriend Brendan moving to LA is going to be a huge thing for me because he's going to be let into that Rose's world that he's never been let into before.
So you're moving to LA in
September.
Right. We talked about this off air a little bit. You're currently in Philly, making a big move in September.
Yes.
That's exciting.
Yes.
So you're merging those two worlds for the first time then.
Exactly. So I just really wanted to, like, for the longest time, I kept them separate and, you know, really didn't want people into my personal life. But I think that, like, now it's kind of time where, like, I've established who I am as an artist, the things that I like to say and the things that I stand for, that, like, it's time that, like, people who I work with and know and who deal with me a lot of need to start seeing who I am on the outside. And then also, I also want my boyfriend to be a part of who I am on the other side. So
that dude deserves a medal. I met him for maybe 42 seconds today. We need to get a beer for him. Yeah, I mean, good for that dude. That's tough, man. Just like I said, I'm the only guy in the room right now. I don't know if I could do that. That's a tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough cookie.
It affects him too because he has to think about like the things that he says or things that his social media could have said or the way that he looks and how much he's working out and you know things like that. So it's like it's not only me that's part of it. It's like his world too at this point.
Yeah.
And
luckily for him, he's a stud. So
True.
he's a good looking dude. So.
You guys met before.
So we met like just before I had met the Chainsmokers.
That's crazy.
So
he
like
would have never known like, hey, I met this girl on Tinder, and it's like, whoa, now she's famous as fuck.
Yeah, like no idea.
A song that's about me, low key brag.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Good for we want to thank you for letting us obviously record at your beautiful house down here in Philadelphia.
My noisy house.
Hey, whatever. Kids are kids,
It's
right?
authentic, right? That's what we're here for.
Exactly.
If you could leave our guests with one thing, what would it be?
Well, I guess like the biggest thing that we talked about today was authenticity. So I think it's like, I think the biggest thing I want to say is like always do things with intention of being who you are. Because if you can't be in love with yourself, then who can be? You know, it's like I really think that it's super important to be authentic with yourself before anything else.
And that's the journey we've talked about quite a bit because I think we've all heard that, especially as women, since we were kids. Like, if you can't love you, no one's going to love you. And it's like, okay, I get that, but like, what does that really mean?
And you also can't demand others to love you the way that you want to be loved if you can't love yourself that way.
Do you think that's something that you have always felt, or do you think that you've learned to love yourself over time?
Definitely learned. Like, looking back on people I've dated or whatever, like casually or serious, like I look back and I think how much validation I looked for in them, when now I'm realizing like I'm the fucking prize. Like, I know this. Like, at this point, if me and my boyfriend broke up, I'd be like, I'm the prize.
Yeah. No, that's
Sounds like
awesome.
Bobby, because Bobby's motto is
I'm the shit.
yes.
There you go.
I'm the fucking shit. And I say it all the time. I may not feel it all the time, but I say it all the time. I'm the
Yeah.
fucking shit.
Exactly.
Your loss, not mine. You know what I mean? That's awesome. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously, if you want to plug, speaking of social media, if you want to plug your social media, feel free to do so.
I'm sure you guys all probably already follow her, but in case you don't, Liz, where can we find you on social?
It's like literally everything is the same. It's Roze's sounds, Rozes, Sounds. That's it.
That's
and
it.
It's on everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
As always, follow the Irregular Instagram page at Irregular Podcast. Feel free to follow my personal page as well, too, at YoBob, EYOO_BOB.
Did you know that you always squint when you say that? Fun fact. You always go,
Do
oh,
I?
oh, oh, and then you squint when you say, oh. Just a visual for the listeners out there. Anyway, follow my personal Instagram as well at Katie_ANI. It's KAITY_ANI. Liz, thank you again for joining us. It's
Thank
been a
you.
great day.
Yeah, thank you for helping us close out
Of
mental health
course.
awareness
Thank you
month.
for having me.
It was awesome. Thank you.
And we will see you guys next Thursday.
Love you.